Okay, this is Tom Mayo, and I'm recording a video to provide a little bit of instruction or advice on course selection and academic planning in general for folks who have an interest in pursuing a career in healthcare law. First, I think it's important to distinguish between healthcare law as the law firms and even the government understand it and medical malpractice law. Medical malpractice is a species of personal injury and obviously is heavily tort oriented and litigation oriented. It deals with liability issues in the event of a medical mishap. Healthcare law, which can't afford to ignore the risk management issues raised by MedMal. Health law is really a different animal. It's more of a business law sort of practice, although it has transactional and litigation elements to it. It deals, generally speaking, with the organization, finance, and delivery of healthcare goods and services. It has a heavy overlay of federal law under Medicare and Medicaid, as well as significant portions of Obamacare, and False Claims Act, both civil and criminal, and a number of related topics. So thinking about this from the perspective of either a 1L or a 2L, planning your courses in order to position you for a health care law position. I think it's important to focus first on the core courses our school offers that are directly and virtually entirely oriented toward health law as that is defined and practiced. And then to focus on, if you will, an outer core of courses that no good health lawyer should be without in terms of his or her toolkit. And that will make you a better health lawyer, but also a better lawyer in general. If, for example, you don't get a healthcare law job right out of law school, you may want to think about developing a toolkit that will put you in a good place for being competitive for a healthcare law job as a lateral, 1, 2, 3 to 5 years out of law school. So the core courses, pardon me, the core courses that I'm thinking of are, of course, healthcare law, which is a survey course taught in either a 3 or a 4-hour incarnation. It's taught every year, and it is a mile-wide and inch-deep survey of most of the areas in which healthcare law practitioners provide services to their clients. And those lawyers may be government lawyers, they may be in-house lawyers with a provider who's big enough to have in-house counsel, or in a law firm. So those are the major settings in which you may find yourself. There are also think tanks and advocacy groups and professional associations and lots of other organizations that hire lawyers from time to time. So healthcare law positions you for almost any kind of healthcare related law job you can think of. In addition to that, bioethics is an offshoot. Most lawyers outside of in-house counsel have precious little opportunity to get into bioethics issues. I'm thinking here about life and death, end-of-life decision-making, reproductive rights, human experimentation, those kinds of subjects that come up with some regularity for in-house counsel, but very seldom get passed on to outside counsel. So bioethics is another course to think about. MedMal, I will put into that core group simply because almost all of the issues that a health lawyer encounters has a risk management tort liability aspect to it. And so it is important to have a solid grounding in medical malpractice law, even though, especially in Texas after tort reform, roughly 15 years ago or so, med mal is a tough way to make a living, at least as a plaintiff's lawyer. So there aren't a lot of openings for plaintiffs med mal lawyers, but it is a body of law that you would do well to master. In addition, there's food and drug law, which a lot of firms are finding to be an exciting area of growth. In addition to food and drug law, human experimentation arises principally out of food and drug law. And so there's an overlap there between bioethics and food and drug. Finally, we have a public health law and ethics course. It was last offered in 2016. It'll be offered again in the fall of 2017. I'm sorry, of 2020. The focus there is on community health rather than individual health. Community health gets us into issues like responding to pandemics, which is all in the news these days, plus gun control, public health responses to obesity, which is another epidemic in this country, and a number of other access to health issues, disparities in health law issues, or rather in healthcare issues, the kinds of things that determine whether entire populations are advantaged or disadvantaged by the way we've organized healthcare services and their delivery. So I would put those courses in the core that you should consider seriously. And then outside of that core, there are a number of courses that feed into the almost daily practice of healthcare law. I'm thinking now about administrative law. If you're going to do litigation in this arena, a lot of it's going to be federal causes of action. And so federal courts would be a good choice. Notice that both administrative law and federal courts apply in a sort of generic way to almost any practice that would get you into federal court, and in an area that is heavily dominated by federal regulations. Beyond that, you might think about antitrust law, advanced legal writing, advanced legal research, courses that are going to stand you in good stead, not only as a healthcare lawyer, but as any kind of a lawyer out on in practice after graduation. I'm probably leaving something out here, but you get the idea, I hope, that there are courses beyond the 5 I mentioned as being in the core that you should seriously consider, in part because they'd make you a better healthcare lawyer, but also because they're going to make you a better lawyer in general. I guess to that list, I would also add tax law. More than half of the hospitals in America are tax exempt. And so our exempt organizations course, which is probably 50-50, tax law, 501c3, and corporate governance would be a good course to take. It does not have tax law as a prerequisite, to the best of my knowledge. I used to teach that course. I don't think there's a tax law requirement to get into it, but tax law in general is a good thing to have under your belt. And so I think that's a course worth considering. Most students at SMU take that course anyway, and there's certainly no good reason to avoid it if you're going into health law, quite the opposite. So those are my main subject areas that I push when I'm counseling individual students. Let me just add that, first of all, If you took all of the core courses, it would be difficult to find room in your schedule for some of the outer core courses that I've mentioned. And so I think you need to be judicious about how many of your credit hours you devote to health law, specifically health law related courses, and how many of your precious credit hours you keep open for other courses that just make you a better lawyer. I think it is a mistake to over-specialize as a law student, with one possible or two possible exceptions of intellectual property and tax, where employers are going to expect you to have a very solid and broad grounding in that subject area when you graduate. But beyond that, I am much more in favor of a generalist approach with some specialization in law schools, so that you bring value to the firm or whatever practice setting you're in when you graduate, and that makes your interest in healthcare law, as an example, credible when you're interviewing for a healthcare job. I can't think of a worse situation to be in as a interviewee than to have a health lawyer say, "Oh, okay, you're interested in healthcare law. That's great. Tell me about the health law courses you've taken." And your answer is, "Well, I really haven't." That is going to put your resume at the bottom of the pile 9 times out of 10. So taking some courses makes a ton of sense. It also gives you a chance to test whether this really is an area that you're interested in and should pursue. But over-specialization, I think, has significant costs that I would counsel against. So that's it in a nutshell. You can contact me at tmayo@smu.edu, TMAYO @smu.edu. I'm checking my emails regularly. I'm happy to get back to you for individual counseling if you have questions that you'd like to pursue after seeing this video. Good luck. Now,